Like, I had class at 11, so I would get up around 8, like, do nothing in the apartment for a while, and then I would walk to the pizzeria down the street for lunch, breakfast thing, have a slice of pizza on my way to class, and then we would all do our thing. Then we'd go out to dinner. Like, I went one time all by myself, but most of the time I'd go with friends, well, friends, my roommates. And the cool thing about it was that my apartment was right on the river. Like, I actually could open the window and see, like, I couldn't actually see the river because I was the ground floor apartment, so like my window looked straight out onto the sidewalk. So like I got wonderful views of legs, but I could see across the river. But the cool thing though was I was literally like, I turned around the corner to go into the city center because there's nowhere really else to go except from the river, and I was right next to the Santa Croce Church, and it's beautiful, and literally anyone who is Florentine is buried there. Like, and that's the cool thing though, like you mentioned, everything there is older than pretty much anything in the United States. Like, you can throw a rock and you'll hit a church. And it was just so crazy. And the only thing I really felt bummed about was that I didn't know any Italian, and so I would see all these advertisements for like medieval travel and this museum and that museum, special exhibit, and I could understand none of it. So, funny story, I tried to pick up a little teeny tiny bit, but they all thought I was speaking Spanish. Not that much of a culture shock. I mean, my family is very European. My father is German, my mother is Portuguese, and so we have like the same schedule that they do in Italy. Like, dinner is pretty like what we would call early in America. We eat at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then if we get hungry later, we just snack, and so that was kind of what we would do. It wasn't that much of a culture shock, but I'm a big aficionado of pasta, so I was in absolute heaven while I was in Italy. I did feel there was another thing. I'm not very big on wine. Like, if anything, I barely drink any alcohol at all. But the thing is, like, in Spain especially, and in Italy as well, like, alcohol is a big part of the culture. Like, you have a glass of wine at dinner, and at a lot of restaurants you would get a free shot if you got dessert. Like, it was everywhere. And we even one day in my art history class, we took a tour out to this vineyard that was growing organic wine. And I felt so trashy because the more expensive the vintage got, the less I liked it. I was like, oh my God, it tastes like vinegar. Of course, I didn't say that, but of course, everybody goes to the big cathedral, the Duomo in the center of town. And I gotta say, never again, because that place was so crowded. And like the first day we went there, we just like cruised around the bottom, and I went there with my art class, and so he told us about this piece was from this artist and this piece was from that artist and all that stuff. And like the actual facade, like all that green and colored marble and stuff, is actually from the 1800s. The medieval church was just brick. But what happened was, on the last day that we were in Florence, my roommates and I decided to climb the bell tower and the dome on the same day. And that was hellish. Like, I can deal with my legs hurting. I used to do ROTC stuff. But the thing about it was, like, when you climb into that dome, you are basically like, there is the inner dome that has all the shingles and keeps the rainwater out, and the inner dome that provides all the structure. You are walking in between those things. And I'm like 6'1", so the entire time I was trying to like physically scrunch myself in. And I mean, by the time I got up to the top, it was a spectacular view. But at the same time, like, they only have like this tiny little metal railing. That's all it's keeping you from oblivion. And I was just like, guys, this was fun. I'm glad I did it, but it's a one-time deal. I'm never doing it again. One day I just went out by myself, and it was while I was sick and I was just starting to recover. And so I went out on a Sunday night and I just walked. I was all by myself, all the lights were out, and it was just like you could see the bell tower over the buildings. And the cool thing about when they have historic monuments, they just put all these floodlights on the buildings across from them, so they look like a fantasy castle at night. And so I was just walking through the street, and I stopped at this little restaurant, and I had some amazing, delicious food. And I just had this moment of, as I was eating, and I was just like, I could dig with this. Like, I could do this for the rest of my life. This would be okay with me. Well, first off, let me just tell the people who are going to be watching this, do it. But study abroad is amazing because you do get to experience an entirely different culture. And the thing about it is, like, in America, especially here in Arkansas, it's all kind of wonder bread generic American culture where it's like, oh, American is like, you get a beer and you get a hot dog and you get your hamburger and your pizza and there's football and things like that. But then you go to an entirely different place where they're still into football, but it's a different kind of football. And it's like, it's fashionable to be just a little bit tipsy all the time if you're outside. Like, it's fine over there, but in America you might get tossed in the clink. And it's just an amazing thing to just be entirely immersed in a separate culture.